Hey, so I'm in the studio. I'm alone today. No one's come in for a while, so yay. And I'm just having these thoughts to myself. So, in case you didn't know, I've got schizoid personality disorder, although I imagine most of the people watching this already know that. Um, yeah, schizoid personality disorder. I've made a video on it, or you can go look it up, wherever. Uh, it kind of predisposes me to be a bit different to the average population. But like right now, sitting in the studio, I'm sort of really feeling it. And one of the reasons is I finally had someone move in next to me. You can see some of this stuff there. And what strikes me is like, this is a professional sort of art setup. Like, this is a proper artist. She knows what she's doing. I haven't met her, but like, come on. That, like, there's high quality materials, there's like, even that technique and all this kind of stuff. I'm just like, that's professional stuff. Meanwhile, you have me in my space. It's just not. So, I mean, I've got like, some kids' craft books and stuff, paintings that I did mostly a decade ago, just random stuff that I've collected over the years and not been able to throw out because, like, even junk, like every little thing could be art materials, for something mixed media maybe, but I don't know what to do with it. I've got an easel. It's a dodgy one, but it's an easel. This is like maybe one of the most professional things I have, and that was just already here, so I'm using it. But when you look at my art materials, like, this is all dodgy student paint. I'm trying to use it all up. I do have like 2 tubes of professional paint, but I figure I should use this up just while I'm messing around trying to find my style, before I spend money on anything fancy, because like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Why spend money on fancy materials if I don't know what I'm doing? Here's me trying to make 1,000 paper cranes. If you're interested in what I'm doing in the studio, this is what Patreon's for. I've been posting all that stuff and like my progress. And then I've got my desk, and it's just like a random, student desk. You can see, what have I got here? Like some old paint markers that are at least 5 years old, I think. I've got some coloring pencils, been making a bunch of cranes today. Anyway, this is not a professional art studio that I've got going on. This is like a kid's room almost, and this is basically like what I had in my room and was running out of space. Some of it I had upstairs in storage, but this is just stuff that I would have lying around anyway. It's not professional at all. Like, and my neighbor, professional artist, proper artist. Like, I know, like, proper artists, people will be like, oh, you totally are an artist though, because you're so out there and making stuff anyway. But like, what I mean by proper artist is like, this person knows what they are doing, this person does not. And then there's other people here who do exhibitions and stuff. I won't turn on any lights and stuff, but yeah, Pav has done a whole bunch of things. And if you go to the Underground Art Space Instagram, every now and then they link to people who are doing things in here. But yeah, so like there's heaps more rooms through there and through there. And there's also like one dude who's a fashion designer. I don't know if he's studying or if he's actually making stuff, but like, yeah, a lot of people are like that. They have a direction, I guess. I mean, I haven't met everyone, but there is like one lady who's doing ceramics, and she's actually apparently runs classes here, although I've never bumped into her when that was going on. I actually don't see most of the people here, but yeah, like, there's a lot of proper artists here compared to me, and just noticing it more now that I have a neighbor and I can see how she set up her space over the past couple weeks, and I'm just like, a little bit intimidating, I guess. Yeah, and I mean, I guess there could be 1 or 2, like, housewife type people. There are, like, this is sort of in a reasonably wealthy area. Like, if you go further towards the beach, You know, I'm sure you'll find all the rich stuff. But if they're rich, then they could have their own art studio at their home. So I'm not sure, but because we have to pay for these spaces, I'm assuming most of the people who are going to sit up here are reasonably serious about art, potentially professional, potentially making money from it and all that. And then there's me. The only reason I can afford it is because, you know, I live at home with my parents and we just didn't have space at home. So here I am, not sure what I'm doing here. And I'm just, yeah, you know, I came in today and that space is so much more set up now. And I'm like, yep, what am I doing? So basically what it's got me thinking is like the fact that I don't fit anywhere, which, as I said, being schizoid, like I just don't fit anywhere. Which, like, I like being different. I think that's probably why, you know, why we're hard to treat, because we don't really see ourselves as a problem. But where I can see the problem is just that, I don't know, like, if I don't fit in anywhere, then of course life makes no sense to me, because, like, what am I supposed to do? I don't fit anywhere. I don't know if that makes sense. It's just like, if I fit somewhere, maybe I would know what I'm doing. I don't know how to articulate it. But the other thing is, you know, I'm still looking for a band. I know I keep flipping between, I'll just be a soloist, and then, no, actually I want to be in a band. I know I keep flipping. But, so when I'm looking up bands, and especially if I, you know, if it's a local band and it looks like they might have an opening for a singer or whatever, I might go and look them up and just see what they're about. Maybe check out some of their interviews, and lately I've come across some audio or video interviews and just listening to, you know, what they're talking about, what they're into. And it just strikes me that, like, I mean, I'm trying to find a band in metal and I just don't know that much about metal. Part of it is just that I've never been, like, overly interested, and I think for a lot of things I can get interested a bit, but there's always a point where the novelty dies off and I'll move on to the next thing. So that might be one reason I didn't get into metal as deeply. Another one, sorry, I just heard some noises upstairs and it's a little bit distracting. No, I really lost my train of thought there, I'm sorry. I think upstairs some of the businesses might be closing up, and so they're moving things around, and yeah, it just makes me a bit nervous that someone will come in. Oh my goodness, what are they doing? This sort of low rumbly sound. Give me a moment to just get my thoughts back together. All right, yeah, so the other thing that I think probably stopped me from getting too into music is, like, very early on I was like, I want to buy CDs, and if I can't get a CD, then you know, I might check out some tracks online. But I was determined not to do piracy, and that's why I was buying CDs. But then, of course, buying CDs, you need money, so I could only buy a certain number of CDs at a time. Yeah, and then these days, increasingly less people are putting out CDs. So RIP to my collection. It's not really growing much these days, although these days it's been harder for me to get into music anyway. But yeah, so basically my knowledge of metal is not that extensive, and I never really got into the culture of worshipping the early pioneers of metal, like, and then, you know, the big famous bands like Metallica. I like one Metallica song, and then there's a few that I'm like, yeah, okay, but there's only one that I'm like, yeah, and that's just because it's got me bait in it. So it's Sad But True. If you check out the lyrics of Sad But True and you know anything about me, you'll probably see why I'm into that particular song, and not a lot more that I've heard from Metallica so far anyway, because it's not like I've gone out searching for their material. But yeah, it just strikes me that I'm trying to join metal bands, but I don't actually know a whole lot about metal. And I mean, that's fine because I can do the music. But I think there's a few issues, because, like, if I was ever interviewed, I wouldn't know what to say. Like, you know, if you could only have certain number of bands at a festival, who would you pick? Sorry about the jump in edit. I just realized I was starting to get off track and, you know, lose where I'm going with this. But I'll finish this point. So don't get me wrong. It's not that I know nothing about metal. It's just that my knowledge of metal is fairly small. It's just certain artists whose albums I happen to buy, and I haven't really added much to that in the past 5 years or so. Just been listening to the same kinds of bands over and over, and occasionally I'll buy something else on Bandcamp and add it into the mix, but not very often. Yeah, and so I mean, I can see that the way that I listen to metal is not the way that the average metalhead seems to. I'm not sure why metalheads do that. Like, is it everyone, or do people feel pressure to learn about, the rest of metal and the history and get into that depth? Or I don't know, because metalheads do, on average, seem to be a more loyal audience compared to, say, pop, who are jump between the next greatest thing and kind of move on relatively quickly. At least that's how it looks for me. But no, I just noticed that I don't consume music the way that other people do, and thinking about that plus art, it's just sort of making me feel a bit like, where do I fit? If I fit nowhere, is that getting in the way of me doing things and moving forward, I guess? Like with art, I mean, I guess that's more a problem if I decide to exhibit and want to take it further. With music, it's probably a bit more pressing because, I want to join a band, which means that I have to engage with people at a certain level. And if I can't talk about metal at the same level as them, is that going to get in the way? Or are they going to see me as like some kind of imposter? Even though my vocal technique, like I've gone quite in depth to learn that, to learn my style and refine it, and will they still expect me to know all these extra things surrounding metal? And especially if I'm not that dedicated and I don't go to many gigs, it's more just that I like making the sounds and the performance. I guess I wonder about that. I think also just trying to find a band because I am different, that's been hard. For one thing, I didn't realize that my growling style, the main growling style that I learned, was considered to be genre specific. Like, why can't you use a different sound in a different genre? I know it changes something about that music, but don't you want to be different? Don't you want to stand out and be like, wow, this band has a new sound? Why do you want to be the same as everyone else's sound? Like, this is something that happens in art as well. At least at uni, they, depending on what your teacher's like, but often you're told that you should go to other people's exhibitions and see what they're doing, and then you should form little collectives and start a movement like Dadaism or whatever, and I've just never understood that. Like, why do you want to be a part of a movement? Wouldn't you want to be your own thing? And going to other people's openings, like, I get it in terms of networking maybe, but they framed it more in terms of knowing what the fashion, I guess, in art is. And I'm like, but why do you want to be the same as everyone else? Like, isn't it better if you're different, if you're the pioneer, if you're the one breaking new ground, or just not being a clone of everything else? And same goes with music. And I think the part that really got in my way, especially in the local Sydney scene, because Sydney is not a big scene really. A lot of metalheads moved down to Melbourne before the pandemic and before they had the world's longest lockdowns, although I guess China's trying to challenge that now. But anyway, Sydney's scene, not great, which means there's less musicians here to choose from. One of the problems for me is I like to do clean and harsh singing, and there doesn't seem to be that many people who get that. So quite often, I've had people ask me to do metalcore covers, and then metalcore as a genre, they do make space for both clean and harsh vocals in a way that other genres don't, or tend not to. And so, I think I was applying to metalcore bands, and they just didn't understand what to do with me, because yes, there is that playoff between clean and harsh, but my cleans tend to be more extreme, like girlier, very clean kinds of stuff, not the contemporary rock kind of clean. And then my growls aren't that fry screaming, sort of crying in pain, a lot of them sound like, kind of thing. Mine are the more death growl, super aggressive, so I have this, like, the two extremes, and it's a little bit much for metalcore guys to apparently take on board. No one's willing to experiment with that. They all want to have the same rock, clean, and fry scream combo, which are a lot closer together. And they just want to sound like every other band that does that. Maybe there's some more that will have, other growls going on, but I think I go a little bit too far to that death growl extreme. And I don't know. The way I think is like we should be different, but they just want to be the same, and I think that's why a lot of them just go silent on me. They don't even tell me that I'm not what they're looking for. Really, my growls suit more like death metal and black metal. And I guess particularly in black metal, maybe if you get that kind of spooky stuff, you might be able to put in some of the more, classical, clean vocal kinds of stuff. But, I listen to that a lot less than I listen to things that might sound a bit more like metalcore. And I've sort of got to the point where I'm like, oh, well... Anyway, I'm rambling. Point being that I think differently about the vocals and stuff. And I wasn't even that aware early on about the differences between how genres approach different vocal sounds and how people insist on sticking to that instead of trying something different, which I'm into. And so, yeah, just kind of thinking about that. That's one of the disadvantages of thinking differently is other people are not willing to think like that. They just want to be the same as their heroes, basically. And that makes things tricky. And so there's good things about being different because I don't want to be the same as everyone else. And I guess maybe that's one of the things that makes me stand out in certain settings. But the downside is that I don't fit anywhere, and it's hard to find a place to sort of slot into where I fit just enough to make something work. And it's just sort of an interesting thing, probably tied into being schizoid, although I don't really follow other schizoids or, look too hard for them. So I don't know how common this is, but it is a cluster A, odd, eccentric personality disorder, so I imagine a lot of us are a bit weird. That's probably one of the things that makes it harder to find a place in this world. And that's sort of been set off by me looking up more musicians and, particularly in metal and what they're into, and then also having a neighbor who's more like a proper artist. And I'm sorry this video is a little bit more disjointed. It's a little bit distracting when there are other noises around and then trying to work out what I even want to say. So just basically I've just been hit with this feeling like, oh yeah, shit, I am really different. And it's been like that for ages. And like this is despite me I have a Bachelor of Music and I have a Master of Art. So you'd think I'd be able to fit into these different fields, but I still don't. And after the music degree, I actually studied composition, and it took me a few more years after graduating to really even figure out how to write music. Like, it's not something that came naturally to me. And even after studying, I was still like, okay, but what am I doing? And then the art course, I really just did that as therapy because that was during my last depression, my last really big long depression, the major one that I had. I've still been a little bit depressed lately, but that was the big one, if that makes sense. So with art, I don't even know what I'm doing there. So yeah, despite that, I still am heaps out of place. I understand some of the things I should be doing, but I just don't fit in the more natural ways. And there's only so much I can do by intellectualizing, I guess, to make myself fit enough or find a path through it being me. And the other thing is, personality disorders start fairly early and they're persistent through life. And I'm just thinking about when I was younger, other people noticing that I was different and saying, oh, you're so unique and special and blah, blah, blah. And I think for a long time, I interpreted that in the sort of more, self-esteem movement kind of thing where every child is special and different and an individual and whatever. But I guess I'm seeing more now. No, actually, I am different. And people are not just saying that to be polite or encouraging or whatever. I'm actually different. And yeah, like for a long time, people tell me, oh, you're so, I like the way that you think differently and blah, blah, blah. And I just assumed that that was politeness. But now I'm like, oh shit, I really am that different. And so, I don't know, it's just funny, like, especially since I got this diagnosis, it's just reframed a lot of my life. Like, oh no, people are not just being polite, you're actually weird. But people, well, some people like weird. I guess most of society doesn't, but yeah, I mean, it's something that sets me apart, so I'm not unhappy with being different. It's just that now I can see, like the trade-off is that I don't function well in society, and that's something I've really got to figure out. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess maybe the main places that I'm finding somewhere that is easy for me might be like the YouTube Patreon thing. And so I should probably focus more on that. It's just like trying to focus is a problem. Some of my situations not the easiest. Yeah, just a bunch of thoughts. And I've got to really go on wee, so I've got to go and unlock the toilet again. And then, I don't know, haven't made as many paper cranes or been as productive this time, but yeah, there's so much going on in my head. Haven't slept well, even though we've been getting my little brother to bed later so that he wakes up later and is less noisy in the morning, but I've just struggled to get to sleep now. So yeah, it's been a bit rough, But I made it to the studio and I have done stuff, so that's the main thing, right? Is like I'm still trying. I'm been working on my sleep. I've been working on my diet a bit more. Like I've been trying to do the probiotics thing, so Yakult and yogurt, and I guess I've been a bit more careful about what I'm eating. Like, it's not like I had a bad diet or anything, but yeah, just trying to sort out some of my gut issues. Oh, I've still got to do that poo test as well, but it's so hard to time. I've never done one before, and I'm just like, but my psychologist was like, we better rule out any physical issues with your mood problems, and so I went to my doctor. I'm like, are there any tests we can do? Particularly because when my stomach goes out, I'm more likely to feel garbage, like mood-wise, so yeah. But anyway, TMI, I don't know. I can't remember what I've told YouTube, because I tell most of the stuff to Patreon at the moment. But yeah, so sleep, diet, with the exercise, still doing my physio exercises for my back. That's going okay, but it's getting hard to keep them up sometimes. Sleep, diet, exercise. And then, I'm here at the art studio. I'm trying to figure out what even am I doing creatively. I don't know. I'm trying, and then, work-wise, I've had a bit of time off from bonsai, which is good for my back to recover. But, I'll be going back to that soon, hopefully, because I think that's good for me as well. But it's maybe not enough for the government to leave me in peace, so I need to figure out what else. I've thought about, can I make YouTube my job, not in the short term, because I would have to be essentially making minimum wage for them to count the hours towards not harassing me. Yeah, so that's tricky. And then is there anything else that I could handle on a regular basis? I don't know. But I'm trying to think about these things. I'm trying to improve my life. And maybe noticing how I'm different might help me figure out ways to... I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out how I can fit into this world, if at all, in a way that makes me less miserable. And yeah, I'm gonna go and get that bathroom key. See you when I see you.